Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at a Gameweek 33 wildcard team. So for those of you guys who have saved the chip for Gameweek 33 so that you can set up for a bench boost in Gameweek 34, this video is for you. And also for those of you guys who aren't on a free hit like me, right, this video will also feature some players that we can start to bring into our teams as we look towards the future where there are quite a number of double game weeks coming up, right? So Gameweek 34 will be a double game week, which we already know, right? The fixtures have been announced and confirmed. That was old news. Now the latest news is the double game week 36 and double game week 37 confirmation that we have here on the screen by Ben Krellin, of course, right? So now the fixture schedule for the rest of the season is basically set, and Ben Krellin's work is also already done, right? So we do know how the rest of the fixtures will look like, confirmed and announced. So let's quickly take a look at this graphic here before we go into the team, right? So Game Week 34 I won't really touch on because we already know those fixtures there, but the confirmed double Game Week 36 fixtures come from Brighton and also Newcastle. Now those are the two teams that will double. Brighton will play Arsenal and Newcastle both away. Now those will probably be difficult fixtures for them, so not too ideal there, but still double game week for Brighton. But for Newcastle, there's a pretty nice double game week there. They play Leeds away and they play Brighton at home. So comparing these two set of fixtures for Brighton and Newcastle, definitely the team that we will want to target is still Newcastle for Game Week 36. But given that Brighton also doubled in Game Week 34 and also in 37, which we'll touch on later on, we will already still be carrying over triple Brighton for the rest of the season, right? So in that sense, we would still be tripled up on Brighton for Game Week 36, so not too much to worry about there. In Game Week 37, the teams that are going to double is Brighton, Chelsea, Manchester City and Manchester United. So taking a look at the fixtures, Brighton will play Southampton at home and Man City at home, right? Man City, of course, a tough game, but Southampton at home is definitely a fixture that you would see Brighton doing very well in. Chelsea arguably has the worst double game week 37 set of fixtures, so Man City away and Manchester United away. So we probably want to lay off those Chelsea assets as well. And then for City and United, they do have a decent double there. Chelsea at home for Manchester City, and then the second fixture would be Brighton away. Right. As for Manchester United, it'll be Bournemouth at home and Bournemouth away and Chelsea at home. Right. So there we go for the double game week 36 and double game week 37 fixtures. In general, what I would say is that it's not too different from the predictions that we already had from Ben Krellin a couple of weeks ago, right? So in general, the teams that we would want to target would still be the same as those in Game Week 34, where Brighton are the teams that we want to target from 34 till the rest of the season. United and City as well. Liverpool also do have a good set of double Game Week 34 fixtures, and that's why we want to target them as well. But aside from that, I think the wildcard draft would generally feature teams from this set of teams that I just mentioned, right? So there we go. Let me know what you guys think of the fixtures and how you are reacting to them. But let's take a look now at our wildcard draft. So this is a draft that I've come up for a Wildcard 33, and in general, before we jump into this draft, I want to say that a 3-5-2 formation would generally be what we would be going for from Game Weeks 33 onwards, right? Especially if you are on a wildcard, right? And there are a couple of reasons for this, right? Mainly the best options will come in the midfield, so we want to make sure that we secure a great midfield 5, and also up front, you would probably go with Erling Haaland plus a doubling striker, and that's pretty much it, right? And then, of course, that leaves you with 3 defenders. So in general, this would be the structure that I think would be in place for a lot of teams moving forward from now till the end of the season. So if you're on a wildcard, I will probably jump on this formation right away. And that's why, as we can see on the bench there, I've gone for the third forward of Edouard, who's only 5 million, right? Really cheap, and I don't think we would actually use him, but he's a decent option on the bench. So talking about keepers first, we see John Stone and my substitute keeper Ederson. Now, in terms of keeper choice moving forward from 33 until the end of the season, Ederson would be the one, right? But I think because he plays Arsenal at home in Game Week 33, we can go for John Stone as the substitute keeper first in our starting 11, who plays Wolves away. Now, it is also important to bear in mind that Guaita has returned to training now. So come game week 33, right, if we do get some news in the press conference that Guaita will start ahead of Johnstone, then by all means, of course, bring Guaita in instead for Johnstone. But aside from that, the rest of the weeks we will probably be using Ederson, who's currently on the bench for this week. I know what you guys think about Ederson. He always concedes that odd goal from maybe 1 or 2 shots conceded the whole game. Now, generally that has been the case for a lot of people who have owned Ederson this season, but I do think like moving forward, we definitely still want a City defensive asset, and that's because triple City is probably the way to go, considering that they are just behind Brighton as one of the top teams with the most remaining fixtures, right? So there we go with Ederson on the bench and Johnstone in the starting 11 for now, right? And then in the defense, we have Trippier, Trent and Estupiñán. Currently, based on these set of fixtures here, definitely we start these three and have Botman and Shaw on the bench. But in general, just to touch on the reason why some of these players are in the team, Trippier, I think, kind of picks himself. Botman as the second Newcastle double up is simply because Newcastle have that double in game week 36, so I think we would want to kind of target that set of fixtures that, as we mentioned just now, look pretty good for Newcastle in 36. For Trent Alexander-Arnold, it's definitely because of his assist potential, his attacking threat, and also Liverpool's great fixtures in game week 34 and also beyond. They look pretty good as well. For Estupiñán, definitely because Brighton are the team with the most remaining fixtures, we're going to have at least one defensive asset. I wouldn't triple up on the Brighton midfielders. As I mentioned, there are a lot of midfield options, right? So we would want to go for one defensive one and two attacking options, and that's how we would be setting up in this draft for Brighton. And lastly, for Luke Shaw, who's on the bench, is also to cover Manchester United's doubles as well. Now, there have been a couple of developments in in United's defense, right, where we see Varane, who's still out injured, and also Martinez, who is ruled out for the rest of the season. How that affects the United defense is probably that it makes it a little weaker, but we know that Luke Shaw is a player that can also get attacking returns, right? Of course, if he does feature in the left centre-back role, then maybe not as great, but we'll see how things develop. But for now, I would still go for Luke Shaw as a defensive asset from Manchester United, right? So there we go with the players currently, and let's take a look now at the midfield. So in midfield, we're going to go with a really strong midfield 5 of Salah, Grealish, Mitoma, March and Rashford. For now, the captain's armband is on Salah, but for those of you guys who do think like Haaland will score against Arsenal, especially given the way that they're defending right now, you wouldn't put it past Haaland. So you can choose to captain Haaland, of course, but I've gone with a captain of Salah in this draft. Who plays West Ham away in game week 33, and he also has a great double in 34. Probably the most nailed Liverpool attacker that you would say at this point in time. They have loads of options returning: Nunes, Gakpo, Jota, Salah. Firmino is currently out for a little bit, right? But Diaz is back as well, right? So there's loads of options for them, but Salah is definitely someone you'd say is nailed in that Liverpool team. So he's in this draft and he's the captain for now. For Jack Grealish, in terms of going for a City triple up, you'd go for Haaland, you'd go for one defensive asset in Ederson, and then you would have to choose a midfielder already because Julian Alvarez's minutes just isn't secure enough, right? So if I were to pick a City midfielder who's the most secure for minutes right now, I would still say that it is Jack Grealish. I know some of you guys are talking about Mahrez, who's just come off a hat-trick in the FA Cup against Sheffield, right? I will say that Mahrez is still very risky in terms of expected minutes. Of course, if he plays every game, I would prefer to have Mahrez instead of Grealish. But if I were to pick a City asset right now that I can keep for the rest of the season, that player is Jack Grealish, right? I don't think like Foden will take up too much of Grealish's minutes, right? Because Grealish provides something different, and Pep did say that the control that Grealish gives City on the left-hand side of the attack, right, is something that he really likes when he wants to control the tempo of the game, right? So Grealish is in this team for now. Mitoma and March are still the midfielders from Brighton that I prefer. McAllister has dropped back a little bit in the Chelsea game that we saw because Veltman came off and McAllister dropped back a little bit to play a more defensive role. So in general, for the games moving forward, we could always see situations where McAllister may have to drop back simply because he's just a very versatile player, and he can play both in the attacking midfield role and also the defensive midfield role. But simply because of his versatility, it does give a little bit of insecurity for us FPL managers in terms of where he will play, right? If he plays in the attacking midfield role, then that's great, right? In terms of an attacking perspective for FPL, that is fantastic. But if he plays in a defensive midfield role, that's not really what we want. So going for Mitoma and March, we definitely get players who are in attacking positions, one on the left, one on the right. March numbers are really good, and Mitoma has been passing the eye test like crazy, right? So I will still say like Mitoma and March are the ones that I would go for from Brighton. And then Marcus Rashford, of course, he's back from injury now. He's already played in the Europa League, right, against Sevilla. Unfortunately, United crashed out, but Rashford will be fit for the Premier League games, right? So I'm glad that he's back now. A lot of us have him in our teams who aren't on a wild card, right, and are counting on him coming back. So he will be back in time for all those doubles moving forward for United as well. So obviously, the talisman for Manchester United comes into this team, right? So now let's take a look at the forward line. So up front, we're going to go with Erling Haaland, of course, and then the striker that I've chosen to go alongside Haaland is Diogo Jota. Now, Jota, of course, this pick is in reaction to him scoring 2 goals in each of his last 2 games, but I think the way that he's been playing, I just really like how sharp he looks. He's come back from injury recently, but he looks really sharp, right? And on top of that, he's kind of the attacker that I feel isn't afraid to just take a chance, take a shot, and when that happens, he will score, right? So I do like Jota as a pick. The only concern here would be his minutes, because as I mentioned just now, Liverpool have loads of attackers coming back, so definitely Jota may start to share a little bit of minutes or get rotated here and there as Klopp tries to manage his injury or his return from injury. But the way I see it, I really like Jota as the player to go alongside Haaland. There is, of course, Ollie Watkins, but going for Watkins, he doesn't double in game week 34, and on top of that, right, if you take a look at Aston Villa's fixtures, they don't have the easiest of runs moving forward from game week 33 until game week 38, right? Aside from 2 fixtures, which is one in game week 33 now against Fulham, and also in 35 against Wolves. Aside from those 2 fixtures, I think the rest of the fixtures are pretty difficult for Aston Villa, right? So as much as I do like Ollie Watkins, and he is in my own team, if I was on a wildcard, I think I would forgo Ollie Watkins and I'll just go with Jota instead. Right, so of course the third forward, as I mentioned just now, is just a bench fodder, is Edouard on the bench, who plays Wolves away. Crystal Palace do have a pretty decent run for the rest of the season, but of course, as I mentioned just now, 3-5-2 is the formation that we will want for the rest of the season. I don't think Edouard will be used in any of the game weeks. Later on, when we tinker a little bit, we will see that Edouard doesn't really need to feature in any of the games, and if in any event you can't afford this squad that you see here on the screen, the squad value is 101.7 million, by the way. For those of you guys who can't afford, you can always downgrade Edouard, who is at 5 mil now. You could downgrade him to a 4.5 mil bench for the forward. Right, so there we go with this team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And just before we finish this video, I'm going to tinker a little bit and show you guys how the team looks like and how many doublers you will have in game week 34, 36, and 37. Right, so this is the exact same team that we just saw on the graphics just now. Do ignore the things at the top, like the 5 transfers, minus 16, etc., because that's basically based on my own situation. But the team that we see, the 15 players in this squad right now, is the 15 players that we just saw in the graphics just now. So let's move on and take a look at game week 34, which is the immediate double game week after you wildcard in game week 33. You immediately see, right, that you will have a full team of doublers, right? Obviously, we sub in Edison, as I mentioned just now. And then this is also a big decision that has to be made here, whether you substitute Luke Shaw in for Trippier, right? You could argue that Trippier against Southampton at home, right, could outscore any of the 3 defenders right now in the team, whether it's Shaw, Trent, or Estupiñán. But of course, you would want to favor the double game week player, right? So if you do want to play Trippier instead of anyone else, by all means. But of course, for illustration purposes, you can get to 11 players in game week 34, right? 11 double game week players, that is, right? So moving on to game week 36 now. So in 36,
The teams that double, as we mentioned just now, are Brighton and Newcastle, and already you see here you will have triple Brighton, right? Estupinian, March, and Mitoma, and then you also have double Newcastle, Botman, and Trippier on the bench. So bear in mind this is game week 36, right? So you will have quite a number of game weeks to build up until game week 36, where you can start to bring in maybe one Newcastle attacker, right? Whether it's a Callum Wilson, whether it's an Almiron in midfield, whether it's a Alexander Isak up front as well, right? You could go anywhere, and you will have quite some time to decide who that third Newcastle asset that you want to bring in, right? So that's game week 36. Let's take a look now at game week 37, which is the last double game week of the season, right? So this game week would also feature the teams that double, meaning Brighton, Manchester United, Manchester City, and Chelsea. Now, Chelsea, as I mentioned just now earlier on in the video, their game week 37 double isn't that good at all, right? So we would want players from Manchester City, United, and also Brighton. So you're already tripled up on Brighton, as I mentioned, right? It's the same triple Brighton that you would go for from this wildcard in game week 33, right? And then also you are tripled up on City already, right? Ederson, Grealish, and Haaland, and you're also tripled up on Manchester United, doubled up on Manchester United, right? You have Luke Shaw and you have Rashford, and also this is in game week 37, so you will have quite a number of game weeks to build up to bringing in your third Manchester United attacker, right? So whether it be Bruno Fernandes, right, whether it be Anthony Martial if he's fit, right? So it remains to be seen who that third Manchester United attacker that you want to bring in come game week 37. But for now, you already have a very, very strong squad in all of these double game weeks that we mentioned, right? 34, 36, 37, and also, of course, the free transfers alongside that to kind of address your teams moving forward as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys of the team, any changes you would make, and any players that I'm sleeping on. But for now, thank you for watching to this point, right? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here, and I'll catch you guys in more Game Week 33 content very soon.